Mr. President.
Senator from Rhode Island.
Mr. President, may I ask unanimous consent that we lay aside the pending amendment so that I may call up my amendment number 29.
Is there any objection? Without objection, so ordered. Clerk will call the amendment.
The senator from Rhode Island, Mr. Whitehouse, proposes an amendment number 29 to amendment number 2. On page 3, between lines 19 and 20, insert the following section: sense of the Senate regarding climate change. It is the sense of the Senate that climate change is real and not a hoax.
Mr. President, I first would like to thank the distinguished chairman of the Energy Committee and her ranking member for allowing this process to go forward to the point where I'm able to call up this amendment. It is a convention here when amendments are called up to ask unanimous consent that the reading be dispensed with. But in this, the effective language is only 8 words. Climate change is real and not a hoax. So I went ahead and allowed the clerical staff to read the whole operative text of this amendment. It is an extremely simple amendment. We are here in this remarkable body in which so much history has taken place and in which so many great achievements have been fought through, many of them with powerful interests and strong arguments on opposite sides. And through that conflict, here in this body, we have been able to generate some of the great compromises and some of the great resolutions that have defined the course of the history of this country. So what a wonderful place this is to have the opportunity to serve. And now, in this great deliberative body, called by many the greatest deliberative body, we have a great issue before us. Perhaps, as many say, the issue of our time. And that is what our carbon pollution, the excess carbon that we burn when we burn fossil fuels, is doing to our atmosphere and what it is doing to our oceans. There's no factual debate about what it is doing to our atmosphere and oceans. It is crystal clear. And the consequences are crystal clear as well. And if you don't believe me, fine, go ask the United States military. Ask Admiral Locklear, ask the Secretary of Navy, ask the Joint Chiefs of Staff. If you don't want to believe in the military, ask our religious leaders. Ask the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. If you only believe what corporations tell you, ask some of our biggest and most successful American corporations. Ask Walmart, ask Coca-Cola, ask Nike, ask Apple, ask Google. Go on through the corporate heraldry, and virtually every American corporation that is not actively involved in the fossil fuel industry will tell you that this is a real and serious problem. And many of them are dedicating an enormous amount of internal effort to trying to solve it within their corporate boundaries. And again, Walmart and Coca-Cola come right to the head of the list. And of course, you don't have to ask our scientists very far any longer. They're pretty clear. They use words like unequivocal, undeniable, and every single scientific society that represents the major elements of the profession in this country, every single one has made this a priority. And if you just want to go out to farmers and foresters and fishermen, they're already seeing the changes around them. So here we are in this great deliberative body with this extraordinarily important issue that we have to face, and what do we see? Silence. Virtually dead silence, because one side of this body won't even discuss the question. Many refuse to believe that climate change even exists, and for those that do, the political perils of using that phrase have now become so great that there is no serious conversation back and forth about climate change. In the first week that we debated the Keystone Pipeline, which the environmental impact statement will have a dramatic effect on climate change, the equivalent of 6 million added cars on our highways for 50 years. Not to mention the pet coke and the byproducts, just the carbon effect of it, no mention. The only time it was mentioned was when our distinguished Energy Committee chairman mentioned the testimony of a witness in her committee. And she was good enough to make sure that climate change was raised in her committee, and she mentioned that there had been a witness who in turn mentioned climate change. But there was no direct mention in all of the debate that we heard in that week about climate change. It is the word that cannot be said. That is wrong. We cannot ignore this problem. It is too real for my fishermen in Rhode Island. It is too real for the people who are living near coasts and are seeing beaches that they used to be able to play on eaten away. It is too real for the people whose homes have fallen into the sea. It is too real for us not to discuss it. Now, it's not going to be easy, and we have to start somewhere. So this is a start. And I'm going to ask my colleagues to vote on such a simple question. Is climate change real, or is it a hoax? Both points of view have been expressed in this body. Where do we come down? Let's actually find out. And if there are people on the Republican side of the aisle who are willing to say, you know what, climate change is real. My moose up in New Hampshire, you could say, are suffering unprecedented infestations of ticks because there's no snow for them to fall on and die, so the moose are getting overwhelmed. You could say that in the University of Oklahoma, the leading dean is an IPCC member and led the establishment of Climate Central. You can go to the Carolina coasts and hear from the coastal agencies about sea level rise. You can go to Arizona and hear about the desertification and the drought. You can go all over and you can find these things, and they are real. We have to have this conversation. It has to begin with as simple a proposition as this, and then I hope if we can build off this, if we can find a few Republican senators who will say publicly that climate change is real, we can then go on to, okay, if it's real, let's have a conversation about what we do about it. Because recklessly continuing to dump megatons of carbon into the atmosphere every year is not a solution. And I don't want to be part of a generation that our kids and our grandchildren look back on and ask, where were they? Why could they not address this question? There they were in this great deliberative body. There they were with this great issue of our time. Why would they not even discuss it? So I hope this amendment gets the conversation underway. It is one I look forward to, and I think there are very sensible ways to solve this problem, including ways that have been supported by everything from Republican secretaries of the Treasury to the lead economist for Ronald Reagan, the famous Mr. Laffer. There are ways we can make these adjustments, but we have to have the conversation, and I hope this begins it. With that, I yield the floor, and again, I thank the distinguished chairman of the Energy Committee for her courtesy in allowing this to proceed.